Let's jump right on in. Sean from Vesta Live, thanks for jumping in. We've got some relative breaking news on JPMorgan, who just got caught and a little bit of a beatdown by the SEC here. Before we jump in, first and foremost, if you haven't subscribed, please do. We're always looking for breaking news and other financial and economic conversations we can have. So if you haven't, please hit that button. We always appreciate a like on our videos. Let's pop right into this and not waste any time. So JPMorgan, which is a massive bank that operates globally, across a number of different sectors. I'm sure you've heard of them. They were just hit with $200 million in total fines for letting employees use WhatsApp in what was seen as an apparent effort to evade regulators. I'm going to drop sort of like some of the key points that I'm pulling from this, and I want to explain also what the big deal is if you don't quite understand how these things work. So first and foremost, this is what we know. The SEC came out with the announcement Friday, which is today, that JPMorgan Securities admitted to bookkeeping failures and agreed to pay $125 million to settle those charges. Now, another regulator, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, also fined the bank $75 million. So the SEC basically said that JPMorgan acknowledged that from at least January 2018 to November of 2020, its employees were using personal devices to send texts, WhatsApp messages, and emails about company business. Now, finally, it goes on further to say even the managers and senior personnel responsible for compliance, think about that, the people in charge of compliance used their own personal devices to communicate sensitive business matters, according to the SEC. So look, the stock today, real quick before we jump into this, is down 2.28% for the day. That's $3.65, up just a tick after hours trading right now. Now, the reason this is a big deal is in terms of regulated industries, think banking, investment banking, financial advising, et cetera, wealth management. You need to be able to account for communications, right? This means that when you communicate with customers, you have to save that information. That doesn't mean you have to print out an email and save it in a drawer or a file cabinet, but anything that someone does in this realm has to be recordable. It could be in a data lake, a data warehouse, it could be somewhere on a hard drive, but it's got to be easily and readily accessible, kept safe, but able to be audited by financial authorities at any given time. So in essence, what was happening here, and they admitted guilt, so I think it's safe to assume that they maybe knowingly did it, but I never want to assume anything because it could have been a bigger fine for fighting it. But at the end of the day, they weren't following those rules. So this means that information that maybe wasn't privy, wasn't being shared in the way it should have been, it wasn't being shared in a fair way, which opens up opportunities for the wrong kind of things to happen, people to receive information they shouldn't. It means that devices are much easier to hack than potentially corporate security. So this is one in a long line of situations where we have very clear regulations that are being very clearly ignored. This is going to cost JPMorgan $200 million, which is probably a drop in the bucket for them ultimately. We've seen a little bit of a hit in the share price. But I think, unfortunately, what this drives home is a continual effort for shareholders to not be getting their fair value. Frankly, I think that this is something that $200 million is probably a reasonable amount. I'm sure nothing necessarily bad has come from this at this point. But as anyone who owns shares in these companies, you're buying it in the good faith that they're doing the right things, they're following the rules and regulations, because this is a $200 million tax to the shareholder. I want to say that again. A company is nothing more than the aggregation of all of the people that own its shares, right? I'm not talking about stakeholders here. There's many, many stakeholders in the business, employees, customers, et cetera. But the shareholders ultimately own the company. Every shareholder who does the right thing, buys with the right reasoning, and doesn't pursue the wrong things in these accounts is treated the wrong way when things like this come out. Now, I don't know exactly who's to blame or where this came from. I think we're going to see a lot more coming out over time here. But that's just my feeling. It's just one in a long line of things being done wrong that are continuously hurting shareholders who are simply holding things to hit their financial goals. So with that, I'll recap quickly. JPMorgan hit with $200 million in fines for a number of reasons, primarily focused on leveraging WhatsApp, text messages, personal devices, et cetera, to share sensitive information potentially about the company. So with that, have a good Friday, enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk soon. Thanks so much.